Welcome to the Baseballtown Charities Phillies Winter Tour 2021, presented by Leibensberger Funeral Homes.
Since its inception in 2002, Baseballtown at Charities has been investing in the future of baseball, raising several $1 million to build facilities and fund programs in and around Reading. It started with the construction of Gordon Hudak Stadium at Lowers Park, a baseball palace for inner-city boys and girls of the Baseballtown Junior RBI League. It continued with the renovation of Reading's historic Bear Park, and then expanded beyond the city limits to build the Savage 61 Dream Field, a ballpark specially designed for those with physical and cognitive challenges. In addition to financially supporting the leagues that utilize these facilities, Baseballtown at Charities recently started the Rip It for Life program, which provides free lessons, batting cage time, and invaluable guidance about life to players who lack the financial ability to pursue playing at a higher level. We invite you to celebrate our national pastime while preserving its future by supporting Baseballtown at Charities. Please visit baseballtown.org to donate today.
All right, I'm Chuck Domino, president of Baseballtown Charities, and today I'm with Steve Noworyta, special assistant player development for the Philadelphia Phillies, better known affectionately as Novo, simply Novo, because no one knew how to say your name when you first started. So we just shortened it to Novo, and you probably had that your whole entire life.
I've had all the way from my kindergarten teacher till now. Hey, Novo, could you go get this? I don't even know if they knew my first name. I mean, they just wanted Novo.
When they took roll call, they just said Novo.
Yeah, I knew exactly what they were doing.
Well, Steve, you joined the Phillies in the mid-'90s. What was your baseball background before joining the Phillies?
Well, I've been fortunate enough. This September will be my 40th year in baseball. I've been with the White Sox for 17 years in the player development role. And, I was reading Baseball America and seeing how things were happening in Philadelphia because I was keeping an eye on Terry Francona. Terry Francona was with us in Chicago. And fortunate enough, it was, I think, in October of '98, I think it was, when Ed Wade had called our owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, and asked for permission. And Jerry, I never had a job interview. I mean, I went right from the field to playing. To the front office. And Jerry goes, you know what? It'd be a great experience for you. Why don't you go through it? I said, I would love to, because I want to see if I could bring something to an organization that could really help them. And from that point, I went through a job interview with Ed in Cincinnati when we were playing the Reds at the time. And Ruben was in the room. And then the next day I had to fly to Clearwater, Florida, and meet with Dallas Green, Lee Elia, Mike Arbuckle. And the rest was history. So
you mentioned in your answer, you went from the field to the front office. What were you? I think you were a pitcher, right?
Yes, I pitched for 2.5 seasons. Tore my shoulder up. My first year, I was 15-3 with the White Sox. Ended up getting the minor league player of the year. Things seemed to be going well, but the funny part about this is Dave Dombrowski, who is now our president. I have it sitting in my office here. I have a Western Union telegram from him and welcoming me to the White Sox family because I was getting ready to sign my contract. So you talk about, he was the director of minor league operations back then.
Wow.
So you talk about something that's going to be, 40 years ago, and here he is with us now with the Phillies. So I was always, I loved baseball, and then when I saw my career on the field starting to go south, my arm was never the same. I got a chance with the Texas Rangers. Went to spring training with them, and this was the spring of '84. And I get released by Texas. Their general manager, Tom Grieve, came in and said, "Hey, would you like to work with with us in the front office?" And I'm like, wow, this is great. I said, could I have the weekend to think about it? I went to Sarasota where the White Sox were training, and they said, what are you doing here? I said, I just got released by Texas. And then they said to me, what are you doing now? I said, Texas just offered me a job. They said, how about coming back with us? I go, I'm leaving Florida with 2 opportunities, which I was very blessed and thankful for. So that time in '84, I started my front office career in the baseball operations part.
Well, that's something all these years I've known you, I never knew that story because I was with the Texas Rangers in Oklahoma City in 1983. And a year before that, and Tom Grieve was the general manager.
Yep.
And
Marty Scott was the farm director.
Marty Scott was the farm director. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Tom Burgess was our manager. Tommy Burgess. Wow. Some old school people.
Well, and I still have a picture in my Rangers uniform, and because at the time they sent it to me, and they said, "Who's this stranger Ranger?" I had no mustache at the time, so it was, it's a great memory to have. But I was blessed. I had really good baseball people in my life, and then to have a job right out of playing and to be, coming up on 40 years, it's been great.
So since you've been with the Phillies, how has your role changed through, I guess, 25, 26 years now?
Well, I was fortunate enough to work with Mike Arbuckle, and fortunate enough to talk to Paul Owens, who our building in Florida is named after, because I want to know from Paul what it took, how he had all those pennant flags flying at the vet. I wanted to know those years, 5, 6 years in a row where he won. And I was fortunate enough to talk to him about it. And when I realized that our philosophies were so close together, I really felt good about coming into the system. And then to work with Mike Arbuckle, who was phenomenal, coming from Atlanta, winning all those pennants with the Braves. So I was fortunate enough to be under his wing, and then finally taking on the chance of being a player development farm director. It was fun because at that time in 98, there was no weight room, no culturalization. We hardly had any Latin players. Just the presence of what the Phillies stood for was fun to rebuild. I mean, there was a weight rack the size of a table, and that was it. And at the time when I interviewed, Dallas Green was saying that our players at AA were getting hurt because they weren't conditioned or properly taken care of with the strength and conditioning, and that's what they wanted to bring in. And coming from Chicago, I was fortunate enough to have a really good strength coach in Vern Gambetta, and the guy that was a triathlete that now works with one of the top agencies, Steve Odgers. People couldn't understand. We never got anybody hurt, but it was what they were teaching at the time with bands and everything that were being done in the 80s. And, you see all these rubber bands and everything that we're doing now. This is all taking place now. We were doing that back way in the late 80s, early 90s. So I was able to bring that on, and then to see the changes, and then eventually, us winning the World Series, it meant a lot to all of us, but it was so special to see that growth through that time.
When you mentioned Mike Arbuckle, I always associate you with Mike Arbuckle. I think you two came in together the same year, or maybe a year apart. Is that about right?
He was about 3 or 4 years ahead of me. He came on, and then I followed right after that. And he was special. His eye for talent was amazing. I mean, the players that we brought in that time frame were just amazing, and to build that system and to see how it built was phenomenal.
Well, that's a great transition to my next question. Through the years, you've seen a lot of great players, and especially in those Mike Arbuckle late 90s, early 2000s. I'm going to throw a few names out at you, and just give me your first impressions of these guys when you maybe first laid eyes on them in spring training, or even before that. Scott Rowland.
Scotty, I mean, a big farm boy from Indiana. Gosh dang, he had size. He had everything that you wanted, as you see as a player. And then for us to build onto that, to build that strength, and to see him play, you knew that he was going to be special in our system.
Yeah, when he came up here, when he got here, he wasn't even 21 yet.
Yeah.
And
right.
And you could just tell, the way the ball jumped off his bat, and line drive hitter, both gaps. Another name, Jimmy Rollins.
Oh, his charisma, his personality, he had everything written to be a great major league player, which he ended up doing. Just his swagger. I mean, he had, he was a team guy. He loved his teammates, but just the way he went about his work and his swagger, like I had mentioned, to me, these guys, you can tell when they come to the field that they're going to be something special. And but he carried it, and all the things that he did for us when he was in the big leagues never surprised me, because that's what he was in the system.
When he first, just to tell you how little I know about player development, or when he got here, he was about 5'7", and he probably he probably didn't grow an inch after that. Well, I don't know, he was 21 or 22 when he got here. And I said to our manager at the time, Gary Varsho, I said, this guy is like, he's too small to be, a big league shortstop, isn't he? And Varsho said, this kid's going to be the Philadelphia shortstop for the next dozen years. And, sure enough, he went on to even, longer than just a dozen years.
Oh, yeah. Just the size. I mean, that never was a question for us. It's what his packet carried, his total package with him that made him what he was for us. I mean, and that doesn't surprise me at all, that Bar said.
Yeah. Pat the Bat Burrell.
Oh, yeah, Pat. Other than corralling him around once in a while just to make sure you keep him in the stable, he was a professional, but he also loved the game. Even though you love life and love the game, there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you bring that to the field, and he did. And it's nice to see that he's still involved in the game, but with his power, I mean, all those guys made that park look small, and Pat was one of them. And it's that mix. All the guys that we've talked about had a great mix together, and he is what we thought he would be, and I can understand why they drafted him.
Ryan Howard.
Ryan. I mean, it was fun coming to your park when he's hitting all those home runs. I mean, some towering shots. He carried, I mean, with his size, that's what I mean about Mike and his group at Marty Wolver at the time. They really knew how to really select some big league players that end up being impact players. And that's hard to do. I mean, you can have a lot of minor league guys that get to the big leagues, but these guys became impact players. And it was just fun everywhere Ryan went, whether you're in Lakewood and then on to Reading, and to see the numbers that he put up. I mean, it was just a matter of time when he got to the big leagues, and he was special also.
We'll wrap up the players segment with Cole Hamels and Aaron Nola, a lefty and a righty.
Again, my story with Aaron, first of all, when he signed, I had an accident back in, I think, 2014, and I was doing rehab in Clearwater, and he walked in, and usually you have to show somebody how to do what our strength and conditioning, the tubing and everything else. This guy came in, he had a plan, and you just sat there, and I'm sitting there with ice on my knee and just watching him. I'm like, this guy could have went from the GCL to the big leagues. I mean, that's the type of person he was. And Cole was the same way. I mean, that California style, that nothing fazed him. You knew that whatever the situation was, that these guys were going to get there. And what was big at the time, we were really winning in the minor leagues, so they had a chance to experience what it took to win those games. So, because I knew at the time, Charlie Manuel, what he wanted was winners. And those guys came there, and they knew exactly what they had to do to get there. And when they got there, they did what they did. So both were very special. And what Cole did in the World Series was amazing.
So they were the easy ones, Steve, because they were all very successful. The more difficult ones that probably talk about are the ones that the organization, maybe you personally, thought were can't misses, and for whatever reason, they didn't reach their full potential. Is there any that in recent years that pop off the top of your head?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, the one that really sticks to my mind is 2003. Russ Jacobson and Carlos Ruiz. If you remember Big Russ, he was a big, tall, strong catcher, and Carlos was just coming up and starting to figure out his way. that spring training, we had arguments of who's going to get more playing time. And both were guys that we knew that were going to go to the big leagues, especially Russ. I mean, Russ was ahead of Carlos, but everybody wanted them both to be in Double-A. And right at the end, when we broke, I remember Mike Arbuckle saying, listen, we're going to give them split playing time and let the best man win. And I'm like, wow, that's okay. This is going to be fun to watch. And about a month and a half into the season, Russ Jacobson broke his thumb, and it was all in Carlos's hands. And from that point, Russ never really rebounded from that. I mean, he hung around in the minor leagues, and Chuchi was amazing. I mean, Chuch was what he did that year just catapulted him to where he ended up doing what he was doing for us. So to me, that one, there's another one. If you remember Jorge Padilla, the outfielder, that he had the look, he had everything about him, the swagger, everything else, and it just flatlined. It never got to that potential we thought it would be. But Russ Jacobson is the one that it was a great spring training. There was a great argument about those two. They both were given that chance, and unfortunately, Russ broke his thumb, and Chuchi took advantage of it and ran with it, and the rest was history for Chuchi.
Well, another one that comes to mind is Marlon Anderson and Dave Doster. I always thought Dave Doster was he was such a solid player, not flashy, but Marlon came aboard and kind of, leapfrogged him up to the big leagues, and David really never got his chance. He spent a lot of years at AAA, a cup of coffee here or there in Philadelphia, but I always thought he could have been a solid major league player, but he was always getting pushed aside by someone a little, more flashy.
And that, and that happens. And I like Marlon. I love Marlon and Dave. And both of them were tremendous players. But it's something, and we still see it to this day. There's something that these players are coming along, and then all of a sudden, this one guy has a little bit more that in them that just makes that catapult, that jump. And all of a sudden, I don't know if a player, I don't know what if they get down on it or what it may be, but Dave got his chance. He got to the big leagues, but it's something that, like I said, we see it in this game that people take that little jump and then they take off.
So when you're looking to draft somebody on organizations, how do you evaluate whether to take a pitcher out of high school versus maybe waiting for him to grow a little bit into his body at the college level versus being afraid that he might be overpitched at the college level?
Well, during that time when Mike was running, they were big on high school pitchers, players. They wanted us to develop and get the right amount of innings, whatever it may take, to get them prepared. The game has changed now, and the limitations that are put on pitchers and all that of innings. It's not that much of a worry. I think as a college player, you get a finished product, so you're not too far away from them getting to the big leagues. Where a high school player, he's got to go through all those steps to get there. So back then, it was more of a real development. Now, because of restrictions and inning limits and all that, it's a little easier for us now to take that college guy and then know that he could project to be in the big leagues for us.
Well, that's a good. That leads to another question. Back when we're roughly the same age, so back when we were growing up in the 70s, 4-man rotations, guys like Nolan Ryan, Tom Seaver, Steve Carlton, Gaylord Perry, the list, Don Sutton, the list goes on and on. They were throwing 250 to 300 innings a year with no pitch counts. I imagine a guy like Nolan Ryan, who walked 5 guys and struck out, 12 guys a game, was probably throwing upwards of 150, 160 pitches a game over 40 starts. And
right.
Yet he pitched into his 40s. And now we have pitch counts, 5-man rotations, a 7th inning guy, an 8th inning guy, a 9th inning guy. And it still seems as though there's as many, if not more, arm injuries. Is there any It seems inexplicable.
Yeah, what you had mentioned about a lot of those great names, but if you take away those names and the players that were underneath them that may have not gotten there because of injury, back then, if somebody got hurt, that was the end of their career. Now you have a lot of legality. You got workman's comp. So you really got to, and I understand what you're saying. Now that we've cut back on it, there's injuries also. I just think you look at these kids before we get them now. Look at how many pro scouting days that they're going to. Man, these kids are going to all these things. So a lot of these injuries might be existing, where that area in the shoulder may be a little bit frayed because of all what they did in all these camps, these big pro scouting camps that they have. So I think it's one washes the other. I think because of what's taking place now, these kids want to showcase everything. So they're going to do whatever it takes to get there. Where back then, they just let them rocket fire. We didn't have showcases. You went out and pitched, and if you got hurt, you got hurt. But it's something that I know that our group is phenomenal with making sure that the capsule and everything in the shoulder is tightened to make sure that we prevent them from those injuries. But I guess it's just life in general. I mean, it depends on what these kids have done before they even got to us.
So you've had a lot of highlights in your career. I'm going to guess that the 2008 World Series had to be at the top, or at least near the top of your career. Can you just give us any good memories of the World Series? Not just the cocktail party, Steve. Anything from like on the field, baseball.
Well, you know what? 07 building up to the World Series was special because I was really totally involved. And 07 when we finally got in, when we beat the Mets and all that, and I remember standing by somebody's house. We're at a pool party, and my son goes, "Man, you're in tears." I said, "You don't realize the work that it took to get to this level." But 08 was really kind of special. I mean, we had either 10 or 11 of our own minor league players on that team. And 2 of them were 2 6-year free agents that we signed from other organizations that I was able to help them in Clay Condrey and Chris Coast. So, we get to the LA for the National League Championship. We win it in LA. So I got a suit and tie on, and I'm just enjoying the moment that we're going to the World Series. We're in their little locker room in Dodger Stadium. And a bunch of the guys that are in the big leagues that were played in our minor league system, were standing around the cooler. They're drinking beer and, just enjoying the moment. And they waved me over. They said, "Steve, come on over here." So I get in there. I didn't realize I get into the group of them, and then they locked me in and totally doused me with champagne and beer. I mean, to me, it was the ultimate moment. But the toughest part is I had to fly home like that. I did not have a change of clothes. They gave me a T-shirt, everything else. I was so soaked and sticky and sitting on that plane for 5 hours. I told my wife, I said, "I don't care." It was the best moment of my life because and the guys were yelling. They said, "That's for all that running and conditioning you made us do on that time." I said, "Look at us. We're pouring champagne over each other because we got to that level." And to me, that really stuck with it. And then the parade, being on that float and being with Dave Montgomery, who, God rest his soul, I love that man. We're driving in the float, and he says, "Wait till we make this corner onto Broad Street." And I'm getting chills just talking about it. When we made that corner and the sea of red of people just standing on Broad Street was just amazing. It made for all the traveling and everything that you had to do, the sacrifices with your family and everything. And to also go back to what Paul Owens was telling you at the time, it all came true. And it felt good that what Paul said is we were able to do the same thing. So those 2 moments for me really stuck out in a way.
Yeah. Well, we were fortunate to win a championship in 1995 in Reading. Haven't won one since, unfortunately. We've gotten the place a few times, got close. But that celebration and the champagne reminded me, we clinched the first round in Trenton in 1995, and I got pulled into the clubhouse celebration, and I got the champagne, the beer, I got doused just like you did. However, they went one step further, and you're lucky they didn't do this to you. They put peanut butter in my hair. So I had it, and we went down on a bus. So fortunately, the bus trip was only about an hour and a half coming back from Trenton.
Oh yeah, Trenton.
But
yeah.
I came back smelling like you can imagine, and peanut butter on top of it, and drying up in my hair at the same time. Yeah.
Oh,
peanut butter does not mix well with beer and champagne and
no,
hair.
it doesn't. At least you only had an hour and a half trip. Mine, when I got up, my pants were sticking to me, and I had this ugly shirt on. I don't know, it was just a t-shirt because everything else was soaked. But you know what? It's well worth it. When you can do something like that, it's well worth it.
Yeah. And you actually having a hand in player development. We have, nothing. Our front office of minor league baseball really has nothing to do with the player development side of it, but we still feel a part of the celebration because we get to know these guys and pretty well. So is euphoric as we felt, I can only imagine how someone who actually had a hand on the players on the field must have felt.
But you know what? I'll disagree with what you had mentioned. You are a part of it. It's amazing that you don't realize the people that come into your office, the players that need things. If we don't have what your staff and the staffs that we have with our affiliates, we're nothing. And when we win, we all win. And that's what's for them to do what they did. It was a reason for it, because you were a part of what we're, development, front office, it all matches. As long as when it works, you win. And that's why for me, I disagree, because you don't realize what you and your staff do for us when we're in town.
Well, I appreciate that, Stephen. Thank you. And that's that's an old school way of looking at it from an old school baseball guy, and I hope the younger guys coming up through, still appreciate like you do, and which is a great transition to Reading itself. You've been here, hundreds of games in Reading, Pennsylvania. Can you think of any one or two games that stand out, or player performances that stand out? Watching your familiar face to a lot of season ticket holders and fans behind home plate. Anything that really stands out for you?
Well, I mean, for me to be a part of watching Ryan Howard, what he did and all those home runs in Reading, but the one, and it's going to go back to Carlos Ruiz, because there was a point they weren't sure about his toughness, and being at all these ballparks and watching him play, and I'm thinking, do they not see what I'm seeing with this kid? There was a game in Reading, and I don't remember when it was. He got before they changed rules and everything. There was no lane to the plate. He stood there and took whatever was coming. He got run over like in the first inning. I mean, just hammered, laid out, made the play. I'm thinking, man, I give him credit. He's still staying in this game. And about the fourth or fifth inning, he got the same kind of thing happen to him again, and just flat out laid out, and continued to stay in the game. And then that offseason, when we started talking about our future and who could really help us up there, and there was a question made about his toughness. And I'm thinking, after what I saw just being hit once, he should have been gone already, but he just stayed in. And it was true to what he was. I mean, as you watch him play, nicest guy that you ever want to meet, but to see how tough he was behind the plate. And I always tell him, I love the story about him, because when he finally got to the big leagues, and I remember seeing him in La Vega, and he was playing second base for us, and to see that he finally made that stature, there was this black Mercedes pulling up in the player garage, and windows tinted. And all of a sudden, this window went down, and you saw Chuchi's face just smiling from ear to ear. And I go, Chuchi, you made it, man. You made it. He's driving in that big Mercedes, and he just had a smile from ear to ear, but he never changed. But that game always, I don't know why it stuck in, because it just was to see a guy like that, to see how tough he was, and to see the type of person he was, no matter, even now that he's out of the game and you go to Alumni Day in Philly, he treats you like the day that you met him in La Vega. And I respect that wholeheartedly.
Chuchi is one of the nicest guys ever to come through here. And we did, player clinics for kids through the years, and he always stood out as, kids loved him, and he was able to relate to the youngest of kids. My kids were in those camps back then, and Chooch was always their, favorite. Well, he can really relate to the young kids.
No question. And God bless him. I love him to death. Great guy.
Yeah, and I think kids can relate to him too, because he was only like 5'6" or 5'7".
Yes, but bull in a china shop, boy. He was stronger than I'll get him.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. Yep. So you've often told me, and I know you're sincere about it, that Reading is your favorite place to come and watch a baseball game. And I know through the years you've come up here and you've come up with your family, your wife and your kids when they were younger. So just give me some of your favorite moments of watching a game in Reading.
Well, to me, there's two. I'd always, and Charlie Manuel and Dickie are always around, after Charlie got done with his career. And there was what's that? No, and Ducky. You got Ducky in there too with us, So one day Charlie says, "Hey, let's get out. Let's go sit in the box." And one of your staffers said, "Yeah, I think we got a room next to our press box right there that you guys can go sit in there." And I'm like, "Wow, this is great." So Dickie, Knowles, Charlie, and Ducky, we all went upstairs, and the game started. And then, as you know, Charlie, he can tell some stories. And then you throw Dickie, and it was great with Ducky being there, because Ducky's hearing all this true, all these great stories, but also going downstairs to get us a couple hot dogs with the French fries. So. And then myself, I talked to Dickie about this the other day. When he went home, he hurt so much from laughing. We laughed and told stories for 9 innings. And we sat there, and in the 9th inning, we didn't even see one pitch. We didn't even know what happened in the game. It was a classic. I had to call the manager after the game. Hey, I said, "You gotta let me know what happened." I said, "I missed the whole game." It was just, and talking to Charlie about it was so memorable that he says, "Hey, we got to go back up there again, do that again." I said, "Yeah, I'm in there whenever you want to go." But that was one of them. But for me, when I came over in Philadelphia, my kids were 3 and 5 at the time. And, I'm coming to Reading. I'm like, "Oh, okay, now, the swimming pool and the fireworks." And I'm just there, and then I take off. And all of a sudden, we made it a tradition. We get a table of 10 out in the pool patio. Hey, when these kids can eat from the game until about the 5th or 6th inning, this is like hog heaven for them. So they brought their friends. We had our friends with us. We ended up getting a hotel room. And to see these kids swim, a baseball game going on, you had the TV with the Phillies games going, the food, which was great. And then to sit there and to see them with their just getting out of the pool and getting ready for fireworks. It's hard to explain. It was so, it meant so much to the families. Were totally impressed. I'm in just awe, because they just sat there and just enjoyed it, that it became a tradition for us to come out and get that table of 10. And then one day they're both in high school basketball playing, and I'm driving back, and, we've taken vacations all over the place. And I said, "Okay, boys," I said, "all these places that we went to, what was your favorite place to go to?" And they said, "Reading." I said, "You mean to tell me after I'm spending Disney World and taking a Disney cruise and going all over the place, you're going to tell me that Reading was the place?" They go, "Dad, you don't understand it." That was the ultimate times for us and family. It chokes me up a little bit, because it meant a lot. We even had I've got a picture in the back here with them when we got the 2 boys with their 13-year-old. They turned 13, and the sun is setting, and they're looking out on the field watching the game. And it can't get any better than that.
Well, that's great to hear. It's something that certainly Craig Stein envisioned this place being when he, purchased it in '87, and it's great to hear.
He did.
You tell that story. And
well, it's a favorite. It's a favorite one for me. That's for sure.
All right, we're going to put you on a hot seat. Down a stretch here. Some quick one-hitters. Day games or night games?
Day games, because you're centrally located a little bit for me, and the ones were real great. And I know it's only one, but you'd have a 9 o'clock game. I'd shoot over to Lehigh for the 1 o'clock, and then make the 7 o'clock in Lakewood. So you can't beat it. Give me a day game.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, day game, getting home and spending time with the family. That was nice too. But give me the day games.
Okay. Designated hitter in the National League, or let the pitcher hit?
Let the pitcher hit. I like that the two leagues are separated by it. I love it in the minor leagues. It gives your managers a chance to really manage to figure whether to keep the pitcher in or make a change. A designated hitter just kind of lets it just play itself out. I like that the manager has to decide what he's got to do.
Okay. Extra innings, starting a guy on second base or playing it straight up old school?
I like the old school in the majors. I like the 10th inning with a man at second, because there'd be days, especially with inning limits and everything now these days, something's going to happen between the 10th and 11th inning. I kind of like that. It kind of saves on the arms for us in the minor leagues. I think it's a great rule, especially at the lower levels, but I do like the rule in the minor leagues.
Okay. Reddings hot dogs or Reddings French fries?
Give me, I'm going to take the fries with Ducky sitting next to me and having a good conversation.
That's a tough one, the hot dogs or fries.
Yeah, they're both.
You usually have to have them together.
I do. I mean, but I'm taking the fries right now.
All right. Drum roll. Crazy hot dog vendor or the Tooth Fairy?
Well, on the serious note, the Tooth Fairy, because it made me think of getting calling my dentist to get my yearly checkup.
All right. Well, we'll just leave it at that. Steve, anything else you'd like to add?
No, you guys have been family for me, and like I said, it's always been a part. No matter what what affiliate, you guys are part of this, and that's what makes it special. That you could come into an office, sit down and talk with the front office people and feel comfortable, and then go watch a game. I mean, I would go see our manager, but I also enjoy coming into your office and seeing everybody and talking to them. I mean, even your ushers, there's certain ushers that I've known for years that you just come and you talk about family and they ask about your family. I mean, that's special, but that's why I always felt that we're all in this together, and that when you do that, you have great success with it. But Reddings has a special place in my heart with my kids and my family, and I can't thank your staff and everybody enough for the way they made us feel.
Well, that's great. Novo, you're the best, and thank you for participating in this.
I was happy to do it. I was looking forward to it.
After losing a loved one, families often wonder what next. You'll find the answer at Leibensberger Funeral Homes.
Everyone who walks through our doors is treated with respect and compassion.
We take the time to learn about your loved one and celebrate their life with a service that reflects who they really were.
Offering 2 locations, ample parking, and a spacious chapel and vestibule. Let our family help your family find peace at Leibensberger Funeral Homes.
Thank you for watching the Baseballtown at Charities Phillies Winter Tour, presented by Leibensberger Funeral Homes. Special thanks also to Herbine & Company, GT Church, Savage Auto Group, Fox Rothschild LLP, and M&T Bank.